When I was about 23 years old, I experienced something so scary and so unsettling that happened on Valentine's Day. Let me just say that if you choose to meet someone online, I highly advise you to be extremely careful. In this story, I wasn't careful enough with online dating. I'll try to explain this story in the best detail as possible, as this happened a while ago. It was the end of the winter of 2013, and I just came home after I had graduated college. I spent 4 years living on campus just to get a bachelor's degree, so I was glad to be home and to be done with school. Even though I was 22 years old when this happened, my parents basically forced me to find a job, or else they would kick me out of the house as I was still living under their roof. I wasn't in the position to be on the streets, so within a week I had started working for a landscaping business. After the first few weeks of working and stuff, I started to feel lonely in my life. I had friends, but they couldn't hang out as they either worked or lived too far away. I needed to find someone that I could be with, like a relationship. I'm a very socially awkward person, and on top of that, I'm also really shy, so going out to talk with girls or to meet new people wasn't my thing unless I really knew them or I was with another person. Eventually, I decided to try online dating for once. I've heard all of these stories about how you could get catfished and how horrible things can happen to you. But of course, I didn't pay any attention to that and started finding a dating website. I eventually ended up finding Match.com, aka the most popular dating site. I signed up, created my profile, attempted to find a girl I was interested in, and all of the other stuff to get my profile set up. For the first few weeks, it was really boring. There was nobody that I seemed interested in, and nobody took the time to message me. Pretty soon, I started to give up and lose hope. Fast forward about a week later, I'm on my laptop watching YouTube videos and whatnot when I saw a message appear from Match.com. I freaked out as soon as I saw it and opened it immediately. I had saw that I matched with a really cute girl. I'm not going to reveal her real name, but let's just call her Amy. Amy was a little younger than me, maybe about a year. Her profile picture showed her driving a car. Her bio had the same interests as I did, gaming, music, and stuff like that. I messaged her with a hey, and she responded almost immediately with, "Hey there, I'm Amy." I introduced myself as well, and we started chatting for about a good hour about our interests. For the next few weeks, after I was done with work, I'd go on my laptop to chat with Amy. Things were looking pretty good, and I thought that I would found someone who I could interact with. One day, Amy invited me to meet up at a park on Thursday, which just so happened to be Valentine's Day. My first instinct was to say yes, but I then stopped myself and thought about it. I started thinking that, what if Amy wasn't real, and that I would be kidnapped or something like that? I decided that I was reading too much into it, and I stupidly accepted her invitation. We made plans to meet up at the park at around 3 p.m., which worked out perfectly as I got out of work at 1, which would leave me enough time to get ready. When Valentine's Day finally came around, I felt so nervous, and throughout work I'd sometimes go off track when I was doing my tasks. However, I went through it, and time flew by quickly, and it was eventually time to leave and go get ready. Do you ever have that feeling when you're about to meet someone you never met before? Yeah, I had that feeling in spades. As soon as I finished getting ready, I got in my car and put the address to the park on my GPS. It was a 20-minute drive away, but I really didn't mind it. The park wasn't 20 minutes away, it was more like 30, so I was annoyed as I didn't want to be late. I pulled in the parking lot and got out of my car and sat down on one of the nearby benches. I then texted Amy asking her if she was here. Normally, whenever I text her, she'd text me right back, but she didn't respond. I texted her again asking where she was, but there was still no response. I was very disappointed and that this was all just a waste of time and gas. I looked at my phone and it was already almost 4. As soon as I was about to go get up, I finally saw a text message from Amy. I felt relieved and happy that she finally replied. She said something along the lines of, "Oh, hey, my phone died, but I'm here." I looked around the parking lot and noticed a suspicious black car parked along the side of the street. I texted her saying, "Oh hey, is that black car yours?" She texted back saying, "Yeah, I see you on the bench. Come over to my car. I want to show you something." Red flags immediately start going up, and I knew that something wasn't right, but like I said before, I thought I was reading too much into it. Therefore, I got up and walked over to the car very nervous and shaky. The windows were tinted black, so I couldn't see anyone or anything inside. Suddenly, someone in the driver's seat rolled down their window, but it wasn't at all Amy, but rather some guy wearing black. He looked at me for a few seconds and said these exact words, "Get him." Right after he said that, 3 or 4 men got out of the car, chasing after me. I sprinted back to my car as fast as I could, praying to God that it won't trip. I'd like to mention that I took track before back in high school, so I could outrun these guys, but these guys were fast as hell, and they were about 2 feet away from me. All this time, I was hoping that they wouldn't pull out a gun or them successfully catching me. Eventually, I made it to my car just in time to lock the doors. The men began pounding on my windows, trying to break them, but I thankfully got out of there just in time before they could cause any damage. I drove all the way home, not stopping for anything while my heart was pounding 1,000 times per second. I got home safely, of course, and the first thing I did was delete my profile and my Match.com account. No more online dating for me. I would have just reported Amy to the authorities, but the account was already taken down by then. About 2 days after the incident, I woke up to my phone ringing. It was an unknown number that came from the state of Texas. I answered it annoyed and asked who was it. There was just breathing on the other end. I knew someone was on the other end, so I told them to piss off. After I said that, a very, very low, deep voice came through. They said 4 words that still haunt me till this day. "We will find you." I hung up, breathing heavily, and eventually went back to bed. It's been about 5 years now, and nothing has happened ever since that incident, and I really, really hope it stays that way. My name is Emily, and this took place back in 2014 when I was a sophomore at my new high school. For reference, I'm a female, and I was 16 years old at the time of this story. I had just moved to the school from my hometown in Savannah due to a job change from my dad where he could make a better income. Because I was a new student at the school, I was definitely no popular kid. I was in the honors program and was your typical nerd wandering around who only focused on her studies and had trouble interacting with new people. That one girl who you'd think has no life and no friends, only to end up being the most brightest student in school. Even though I had 0 friends at the time, there was still this one guy in 2 of my classes who seemed really nice. His name was Jake, and he was a pretty cool guy for the most part. He'd ask me about what I was studying, if I liked the school, and so on and so forth. After a while, I started to consider Jake as a real friend and was glad to finally meet someone. On Valentine's Day, I was sitting down at a table at school, eating my lunch, when Jake walks up to me and straight up asks me if I wanted to be his Valentine. The thing was that he had brought me a bouquet of roses and a bunch of chocolate, which I found odd. I was speechless at first and really wasn't expecting him to do that. Jake and I only met not even a month ago, and I didn't really see him other than a friend. I politely turn him down, and he begins to give me a look full of disappointment, and he then gets up to leave. I felt bad, obviously, but I really wasn't looking for a relationship at the time as I had other stuff to worry about. That night, I was finishing up my project that was due for my chemistry class when I heard my Skype start ringing. I take a look at my computer and see that an unknown number is calling me. After all, I have been begging one of my cousins to try it out so we could chat through there. When I answer the call, I heard the all too familiar voice of Jake on the other end of the line. I immediately hang up and turn off my laptop for the rest of the night, not wanting to talk with Jake anymore. I have no idea as to how he managed to get my Skype, not to mention my phone number. I didn't sleep well for the rest of the night, and I was afraid of going to school the next day, fearing Jake and what he'd possibly say to me. For whatever reason, I finally decided to go and was surprised to find that Jake had not been in either one of my classes. It was strange, but I was honestly relieved. During one of my classes, we were all going over our tests when my teacher gets a phone call and tells me to go to the office for something. The sophomores at the school were still a bit immature, and I was bombarded with oohs and laughs while walking out. I get to the main office and go into the conference room, and was greeted to 3 police officers as well as my principal and another student that I have never seen before sobbing. They tell me to have a seat and get straight to the point and begin to ask me about Jake. My face went pale and I was honest with them and told them that he had been stalking me for a few days now. They went on to explain that Jake was planning on killing me and another student on that specific day because we had both rejected him to be his Valentine. They didn't say how he was planning on doing this, but they were eventually told by another student that he was planning on something and my name was mentioned. I was petrified and couldn't even move due to the sheer panic I was feeling inside of me. The whole school had issued an email and a phone call to all the staff and parents addressing that there was a threat and that the school would be on high alert. They had refused to give me any more information about how they found this out or as to why he didn't show up for school. My parents pulled me out of school for a week until Jake was taken care of and that there wouldn't be a threat to me anymore. It turns out, Jake was known to have told threats against people, especially females who have turned him down or did him wrong in some way. There hasn't been any clear evidence that he's ever done something like that in the past, but just because he's never done it before, it doesn't mean that he'll never do it. I never saw Jake again after that incident, and he thankfully never returned to school. I still don't know if he was expelled, locked in prison, or perhaps something even worse. This incident will forever be with me for the rest of my life, knowing that someone had the sheer desire to end my life, all because of a rejection.
You know the worst time to have someone break up with you? Besides the occasional story of a runaway bride you read on Craigslist, I'm pretty sure that Valentines is number 1 on the list. I never would have suspected that my boyfriend Caleb would actually dump me last year. Even though we had been going through some rough patches, I thought we had made it through. He hadn't given me any indication that things were going to take a turn for the worst. In fact, the week before Valentine's, he had already booked us a reservation at Red Lobster, gone out of his way to ask off for work, and told me he planned to really go all out to treat me. Then, early V-Day morning, I got a text that changed my whole world. He decided to dump me. Who does that? Is this like high school? I called him immediately to demand a response. It's just too much for me, Molly. I'm sorry. I should have told you sooner, he responded. He told me a bunch of reasons why he had this sudden revelation, but a lot of it sounded like bull. I knew Caleb. He always rambled like this when he was trying to hide the truth, and the more he talked, the angrier I became with him. Just tell me you didn't cheat, please. I swear if you did, I'm gonna hurt myself, I said between bitter tears. I was experiencing an emotional roller coaster, but it was about to get worse from here. He promised that he hadn't cheated and insisted that I could still keep any gifts that he had sent, including the planned reservation. I know this is all very last minute, but I need space. I need to know where I'm going and what I'm doing with my life, Caleb told me. He promised that he would keep in touch, but I could already tell in his voice that it was over. I was devastated. Honestly, I can't remember the first thing I did. Maybe I smashed something expensive or went to the bathroom and vomited. I was still reeling, and it felt like I couldn't make sense of the world around me. To be honest, I thought about self-harm. And to anyone out there who is ever going through this, please listen to me and realize no man is worth that. I'm so thankful I have had that epiphany, and I hope others do too. And come to think of it, this harrowing experience might have actually been my wake-up call, as crazy as that sounds. But anyway, there I was, trying to find the strength to stand when one of my closest friends, Felicia, texted me and asked if she could come over. I needed a lifeline to cling to after this whirlwind of a morning, so I told her to come immediately. When she got there, I think I fell into her arms and burst into tears. She was shocked but listened as I told her about what Caleb had done to me. And then she had this brilliant idea for us to go get drunk off of our butts, and it sounded exactly the kind of distraction I needed. Felicia has always been a good friend, and I knew that if I went with her, I was going to have a good time. I changed my clothes, put on makeup, and blocked Caleb from my phone. All of it felt very empowering. We went down to the lobby and called for a taxi to take us downtown, ready to live it up. When the taxi got there, I remember thinking that this day was turning out to be good after all. Felicia and I talked as the driver took us to what we thought was our destination. Felicia was extremely vocal about her disgust with Caleb and apparently all men. They always do this. Use us like playthings and get rid of us to move on to something newer and shinier, she said. I think I recall that the driver seemed tense whenever she talked like this, like it bothered him. I was so busy laughing or crying that I didn't pay it as much attention as I should have, and I also realized my memory is probably playing tricks with me because of how jarring the next thing that happened was. We were merging off of a highway to a street when Felicia made some joke about Caleb's prowess in bed when the driver abruptly sped up and we zoomed through a light. I remember being rattled and Felicia shouted to him to slow down. Instead, he just kept going, looking angry as a feral animal. "What's your problem, man?" she finally asked when he slammed on the brakes. I suddenly realized I didn't recognize the part of the city he had taken us to. Were we lost? Was something else going on? I can't tell you how much I wanted this to be a normal thing. Then he turned around and pointed a gun in our face. "Shut up and give me your phones," he ordered. Felicia and I immediately complied. He grabbed our entire purses after he took our cell phones and then started to drive again. Felicia and I were frantically trying not to be scared for our lives, but this guy was wasting no time getting us out of town. At some point, we crossed a bridge and he tossed our purses and phones into the river below. Then he kept driving to the country. There were several times in the drive that I thought about jumping from the car. I didn't know how to tell Felicia what I was thinking, though. We were both scared stiff by the sudden and surprising psycho driver that we didn't dare make a move. I think it was probably 5 by the time the taxi finally stopped, and we had arrived at what looked like a rental cabin. "Stay here," the driver ordered as he got out and went to his trunk. I had literally no idea where we might be, but I used those few precious seconds to tell Felicia that we should make a run for it. "If we work together, we can overpower him," I told her. And when he opened the door to his cab, I kicked him straight in the gut and shouted for Felicia to help me. She was right behind me, and we tussled with this guy for what was probably only 2 minutes. Sometime during the scuffle, he dropped his gun, and Felicia ran to grab it. As soon as she had it, she pointed it at the driver and demanded that he let me go. The way this dude was looking, the thought he might try something even crazier. But surprisingly, he complied and released me. "Give us your keys," Felicia demanded. He dropped them into the grass near my feet and leaned down to pick them up while my friend kept the weapon on him. "We're leaving now," she told the driver. Slowly, the two of us backed up toward the cab, and just as Felicia was about to get in, the guy rushed towards us. I swung the keys in his face and made him fall backwards with a twist. Then, I leaned into the taxi and revved the engine. I shouted to Felicia to go, and she got in the passenger side before tossing the gun out the window. I didn't want to think the nightmare was over until we got away from that cabin, and as we drove off, I could see the guy scrambling in vain to follow us. Neither of us spoke for a good 20 minutes. Then, when I think both of us had the chance to really calm down, I said, "What just happened?" Felicia had been going through the glove compartment and found a few clues. The guy had kept clippings of articles about weird white supremacy and BDSM, weird smut magazines, and what looked like a locket. When we got back into town, we gave it to the authorities and, of course, had to give statements as well. The whole thing, honestly, truly felt wildly surreal. And I later found out that that guy had been wanted in a different state for apparent murder. I know a lot of people say they come face to face with a killer without realizing it, and this was definitely, literally one of those times. It still scares me to think about it. I've been through therapy, but it's just so hard to get over how close I truly came to dying or potentially worse, all because my boyfriend decided to dump me. And I know it's not right to blame him. I wasn't thinking clearly, and maybe Felicia and I were just at the wrong place at the wrong time, but it could have gone so much worse. I guess the reason I even mentioned Caleb again is because when I told him about the whole ordeal, he just brushed this off like it was nothing. I know it sounded a little unbelievable that we went through all of that, but at least he could have had a little sympathy. I still to this day don't know what was in our conversation in the back of that taxi that just truly triggered that guy. Maybe because we joked about man or something like that. Who knows? Maybe that was just his intention from the very beginning. I have no idea. It was definitely the strangest, scariest, and most terrifying Valentines I'd ever had.